My name is Glenn Mather, and I'm founder of NuView Trust. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I'm really excited about all of you joining us remotely to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is Roths. And there's a whole lot of information out there. A lot of it's truth, but sometimes we get whispered in our ear some things that probably aren't so true. So we're going to cover that. We'll probably be together about 30 to 35 minutes, plus questions. We're going to go through this quickly. I just want you to understand that at the end of this, there'll be ways to contact us, that we are a resource on Roths, traditional SEPs, simples, HSAs, almost any type of savings account that's available to U.S. citizens that come tax advantaged. So we're going to touch on those briefly, but today we're really going to dive deeply into Roths. We're coming to you from our headquarters just outside Orlando in Longwood. So welcome. Many of you are probably suffering under the same kind of heat that we're suffering from today, but it's really nice and cool inside here. And I'm really, really excited to spend the time with you. So let's get right into it, shall we? Well, the first part is the lawyers tell us we have to issue a disclaimer. And that basically says we're not attorneys, we're not CPAs, and most of all, we're not your attorneys, your CPAs. Everybody that's watching this event today is in a different tax situation. So obviously, whatever you hear today, I'd love you to go throw that up against your tax advisors and your professionals, see what they have to say. And what actually ends up happening a lot of times is they'll end up calling us on a conference call and figure out what way they can do and self-direct and some of the things that we're talking about. Because the irony is we train those people about IRAs. So that's what we go deep in. Really anxious to share our knowledge, but more importantly, also hear from you. So I understand it from Amy, who's actually our engineer on this show today, is to chat in or send in your questions as you listen, and maybe they're evoked or pre-voked by me. Send them in, and at the end of the presentation, we'll try to cover as many as quickly as we can. So what is a self-directed IRA? We're going to give you a little bit of the basics. I promise we're going to come down close to ground level on this. But many people have heard the term self-directed IRA, and they're not sure what that means. And in essence, it's not a different kind of IRA. It's the same kind of IRA that you can have: a traditional, a SEP, a simple, a Roth. All of these types of IRAs you can have. The difference to being truly self-directed is the choices that you have. Although there's lots of companies such as Fidelity and Charles Schwab that, quote, give you choices, they only give you market choices. And of course, a self-directed IRA, a truly self-directed one, is one that's much, much different. It's actually something that you can actually choose anything the IRS doesn't prohibit. And what's the real benefits of that? Well, it depends who you are, but first of all, you can diversify outside the stock market. So you're not going to be slave to looking at how the Dow Jones did or the NASDAQ did. The second thing is tax savings. The unique things that you can do inside a self-directed IRA, you may not be able to do outside with the types of tax savings that you're going to be able to experience inside a self-directed IRA with NuView. I like the fact that I get to invest in things that I think I have a better shot at, a better knowledge base on. I like real estate, I like lending, and I can do those two things in a self-directed IRA. I cannot do them with traditional providers. And I think for myself, I increase my odds of success, which is that, as you can tell by my hair, I'm getting along with one of those, I'm getting into those retirement years. Sooner or later, I'm going to be there. So a lot of my friends are already retired. And I know the ones that are retired without much stress, and it's the people that prepared, of course, ahead of time. No matter where you are in the age group, you can benefit from what we're about to talk about here. But I like the fact that my retirement is going to be a little bit more secure from all the things that I've learned of being a client of a self-directed IRA and a holder of a self-directed IRA. So I hope that you're experiencing those things too. You may be part of the NuView family, or you may be just listening or hooking up into this for the first time. In any case, welcome. Now, you know, what's interesting in anything, I said this before, that you get to invest in anything that's not prohibited by the IRS. You can see lots of small words on the screen there. But in essence, almost anything, there's only a few things that you're not allowed to invest in. So I probably would tell you what those are first. And they are life insurance and collectibles. That's it, life insurance and collectibles. Everything else you can invest in. So if you take a look at the few items here on the list, it's private entities, private lending, real estate of almost any type, all can be held in a IRA legally if you have NuView Trust as your custodian. It's pretty mind-boggling. But does that change anything in regards to the Roth question? Well, it might. It just might. Let's go on and take a look at that. So inside the tax-deferred programs, there's these programs. There's traditional IRAs. This has been around the longest, by the way. This has been around since 1974. And it was all around getting people unhooked from the traditional pension plans that companies were forced to pay for their employees, and basically putting it on the employee's back with a little bit of a match from employers. And so the idea was, well, we'll have 401k plans. And by the way, you'll see down here, there's a solo 401k plan. We'll have 401k plans, and this way, companies will off that burden directly onto the backs of the employees. And they said, well, what happens if people change, or what happens if people are self-employed, et cetera? They created the traditional IRA. So this becomes yours, right? The I in IRA is individual, right? So it's individual. There's the Roth, and there's the SEP and the simple. Those are the four types of IRAs that people have now, and they're all around contribution limits and the different arrangements. So in other words, this is an employer plan for a SEP and a simple IRA. These are personal plans, but they work somewhat the same thing. All the same types of investments can be held in it, and with the exception of a Roth, all the payments that the contributions you put in are tax deferred. You don't have to pay when you go in. And we'll learn a little bit about that for those of you that don't know exactly what a Roth is, kind of at a top level, how they really work. These are other specialty plans. Every one of these plans is tax advantaged in some way. Every one of these plans can be held within an account at NuView. And what's really intriguing, and I think our clients don't really do enough of this, is they can have a health savings account and actually partner it, let's say with a SEP IRA or a Roth IRA, and you can partner on the same deal even if it's two different accounts that are taxed differently. So it's interesting. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about the tax implications of our savings. We do think a lot, hopefully, about what we're investing in, but those two things should have equal thought. So by the way, all of those types of accounts we do at NuView. Well, what really is a Roth IRA? Well, it's really all around this thought, is when I'm retired, I don't want to pay taxes. I think everything is all to support that, and that's kind of interesting. Just before I came up here to give this presentation, I did a little bit of digging about when all this started. And the first Roth, the laws on the Roth started in 1997. So that was over 20 years since the traditional. And it was really all around this concept of people weren't investing in their IRAs as much as they wanted to. They wanted to find a way to kind of incent the American public to do more without really affecting the US Treasury. Well, the way they would do that is they said, okay, let's create this new plan where all the contributions that go in the Roth are not tax deferred. So the Treasury gets all the taxes on that. And yeah, when it comes out, it's not going to be taxed. We understand that, but that's a long way from that. As you know, the US government is always worried about how do I fund it today? So they would much rather take that and go ahead and put it in because it's going to produce benefits for the citizens in 20 or 30 years. But understand the benefits for the citizens, and that's what's simply amazing about it. All right? The real thing that you have to kind of understand is that it's taxed differently. We talked about it. So your contributions that go in a Roth IRA do not get the benefit of a tax savings. Let's say, for example, you earned $50,000 and you had made a pledge to say, I'm going to put into my IRA 10% or $5,000. If I put $5,000 in a traditional IRA, I will be taxed as if I earned only 45 because that's set aside and it's not taxed. If I contribute to my Roth IRA, I just contribute after tax. Just like I'd go buy a loaf of bread, it would be after tax. Just like I'd go on vacation, that would be after-tax money. So the money that's actually pledged or contributed to a Roth IRA is taxed. And I will tell you something, as far as taxes go, that goes against every precept that I used to learn, which is taxes are best deferred until you have to pay them, until you absolutely have to pay them, because you get the benefit of all of that, not paying that tax for all those years. But the Roths work a little bit different. There are additional benefits. And let's go on to discuss that. We talked about 1997, and once again, it was really Senator Roth's idea to do this. For those of you that are historians, I think that puts him under the President Clinton era when that was passed. But I've asked for something very simple to be created, and thank you, Amy, for creating this wonderful chart. But it's kind of a way to help you understand the difference between the traditionals, and by the way, when I say a traditional IRA, I'm including in that bucket the simples and the SEPs IRAs. But they're all pre-tax type of accounts. What we mean by contributions on pre-tax, for the traditional, there is no tax on the contributions. With a Roth, it's taxed at ordinary income tax. That's what OIT stands for, ordinary income tax. So this is kind of fun. This is the age of a particular person. That's age 20 today, but it's to kind of show the lifespan of an IRA. And those of you may recall that RIP is rest in peace. I don't put a date there because who the heck really knows when we're going to pass. That's what actually makes all the savings for retirement very interesting, right? We don't know how long it's going to have to feed and clothe us in our post-retirement world. It could up to be, my mother lived to 97, and so maybe I need to really dig down deep and save a lot. I'm not sure, but we don't know when that's going to begin or end. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to outlive our bank accounts. So here we go. So here's the dates. 20, I got 59, 65, 73, and rest in peace. These are all kind of important dates to understand as it relates to an IRA. Now with an IRA, 59 is actually 59.5. It's 59 and a half. It's very strange how they did that in the code, but at 59 and a half, basically you can't take the money out of a traditional IRA without paying a penalty. You're going to pay 10% penalty. And with all distributions, typically from a traditional, you pay tax when it comes out, right? Just like this chart says, withdrawals, traditionals get taxed at ordinary income tax. But wait a minute, a Roth, you pay tax here, but you don't pay it here. So it's all about what I said before about a Roth. It's all about in your retirement years, not having to pay taxes on your withdrawals. Now, I never understood that until I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal. And it was talking about it was the editor of those pages, I think it's once a week in the journal. And it talked about, he said he's age 60 and he's got about half of his friends are retired, half of them are not. And the only ones that really complain about the high taxes are the people that are retired. Not so much the people that are earning, because as you know, most of us that are paid by an employer, we have our taxes taken out of our paycheck and withheld. So we don't really see it. We kind of notice it, but don't really see it. Well, that's not what happens when you retire, because when you retire, you pull the money out and then you have to pay the IRS in a lump sum. Imagine how you'd feel if you want to live on $50,000, $60,000, you take it from your IRA, and now you have to write a check back to the government for about $12,000, $10,000. And that's the way it's going to work with a traditional SEP and simple IRA. With a Roth IRA, it's all tax-free. So it becomes really important when you're not earning money anymore. On both cases, of course, the earnings itself, it's not taxed. That's why IRAs, no matter what you choose, is generally going to be pretty good. You just have to select the right investment. Don't forget, this is not an investment chooser for you. It's a structure in which you put your investments. But what happens here is really cool. So if you kind of think about Roth, what you're doing is you're paying taxes, let's call it here, and all along the way, you're paying taxes. You're paying taxes to buy the seed. You're paying tax on the seed. Here's the harvest, right? When you're actually taking it out, no taxes. So I'm not paying taxes on the fruit that I'm picking at harvest. I'm only paying tax on the seed. And it can be incredibly incredibly important opportunity for you. So let's get back to some words here. If we can go one chart further. So here's what the rules are. We said contributions are taxed. By the way, this is interesting because generally when you put money into an IRA and you're younger than 59 and a half, can you take it back out? Oh, I changed my mind. I put $50,000. I'm having a rough time. I'm going to go get $10,000 of it. Let's say I even contributed all of it. It hasn't gone up. I can't go back and get it without paying ordinary income tax on it and a 10% penalty if I'm under 59 and a half. What's interesting with a Roth, you can go back and get your contributions anytime without taxes if you want them tomorrow and you put them in yesterday. Isn't that amazing? You can do that. And here's the rules. There are rules about leaving it in, but the rules about leaving it in have to do with anything that you converted or any growth that they've had on it, right? Not your contributions. So for those people, you have to have it open open and funded 5 years and be at least 59 and a half years old. Now, there's some nuanced rules, and I don't want to go through here. We don't have the time to do that. But this is basically saying, the IRS is saying, I still want you to think about this as a long-term plan. Even if you can go back and get the contributions, I want you to think about it as a long-term plan. Don't think about taking this out before 59 and a half. And I would suggest you don't take it out for a long time. Most of us will not have the flexibility of retiring at 59 and a half. And as you might tell, I missed that window in my own life. But my point is that after 59 and a half, the government says we're going to release those funds to you. But the account has to be open at least 5 years, open and funded for 5 years, okay? What's really cool is these 3 letters are not required. You might ask what they are. Well, if you have a traditional IRA, you may have seen it in the chart earlier, we have it there, we had age 73. Age 73 was important because if you have the traditional type of IRA, you're going to have to be forced to start taking that out. It's called the required minimum distribution. It's based on your age compared to the average life expectancy for people. And it's kind of interesting, but it basically yields a number. The first year is somewhere between 2 and 3% of whatever your balance is, you got to take it out. The reason why the government wants you to take it out is because it's never been taxed. They want to get that tax revenue. And the older you get, the bigger percentage that you have to take out. It can drive you crazy a little bit about money management in your 70s and 80s. Well, there is no problem here because you don't have to take it out. You never have to take the money out. It's pretty cool. So what are the benefits of doing it? We're going to touch on some of them, and some of them we're going to touch on more than once, but we're going to go through this relatively quickly. Once again, it's all about qualified distributions. Qualified meaning they're not early, right? Qualified distributions, they're tax-free and penalty-free forever. Well, I don't know, forever, for as long as you live, I suppose. And for 10 years, up to 10 years of whoever you're leaving this to. And if you leave your Roth IRA to a spouse, it's throughout his or her lifetime, the surviving spouse, right? Remember we talked about no RMDs, no required minimum distributions for the original owner of these. It's flexible on when you withdraw. You can withdraw anytime. And we talked about the contributions being able to be withdrawn tomorrow if you like, even if you're under 59 and a half. And it's interesting, I got tax management in here because that's around the conversion. And we'll hit on conversions in just a little bit. But you have the opportunity to convert almost any type of IRA, actually all the 3 other types of IRAs, into a Roth IRA. But you can make that determination when you convert, which is really cool. Ooh, but everything, there's a dark side, and I'm not up here cheerleading and saying there's no problem. No one can lose if they convert to a Roth IRA or start saving in a Roth IRA. Here's some problems with Roth IRAs. The worst one. What happens if I pay all the taxes up front? So I have a Roth, so all my contributions get taxed. If I convert into a Roth, I have this big lump sum of taxes I have to pay. Can you imagine doing that? And my investments still go up? I mean, that's simply crazy, but you could do that. So I would suggest that your ability to pick investments that are continue to rise are probably even stronger or more necessary in a Roth because you're investing more because you're investing your tax dollars in a Roth up front. This one's a little difficult. If you're older, well, the thought is this: should you convert to a Roth or really start a Roth? Because I'm paying taxes now, that's less money I have to actually invest. So I'm going to be behind the eight ball because I'm investing, but yet when am I going to use those funds and will it all work out? This is spreadsheet kind of analysis for you. And it's really uncomfortable what ifs, right? When am I going to quit working? When am I going to draw down this money? When am I going to die? Who am I going to pass this on to? What about the 10 years that my children might have? How is it going to work out for them? And guess what? You can't predict any of those things, but you need to think about it and put probabilities on that for you. So here's what, personally, what I think about this. I still convert a bit of my account every year. Not all my money is in Roth, but I'd love it all to be. Because when I get on the other side of working every day, I want a tax-free check. That to me is more important. It's kind of like if you decide whether you want to have a mortgage on your house when you retire because you got a real low mortgage. There's a lot of people that are in my age group that maybe have restructured their mortgage and they're at a 3.5%, 4% mortgage. The question is, should they use their savings to pay off the mortgage so they go into their retirement years free from mortgage? And I would say, well, it depends on what you're using that money for. Will it make you more money somewhere else? Then leave the mortgage alone. But if you want sort of the peace of knowing that in Florida, we're a homestead state, which gives it extra protection, do you want to have that tied up? And it could be simply emotional to feel better. I put my money in a Roth, and we've lost our screen here, but I put my money in a Roth, simply, here we go, because I want the feeling of knowing that it'll never be taxed, because I just don't like taxes at all. The other thing you might have a hard time doing is if you have a traditional and a Roth, and many of our clients do have two accounts, it's hard to know what type of investment you should put in a Roth and what type of investment you should put in a traditional. Should I put the real safe stuff, the stuff that builds slowly over time, maybe 3, 4, 5% in one? Should I put the big hit and the big opportunity in the Roth? Well, it's up to you. I can't tell you what those are. Once again, it's sad, as that top point says, your investment doesn't perform. But think about it if it does. If it does perform, which account do you want it? I mean, I think there's no question about that. So here's some questions. Understand that if you convert your IRA, and this is actually an ability for you to decide that tomorrow, I love, Glenn, what you said about Ross. I love the fact that you pay on the seed and not on the harvest, etc. I've got a $100,000 traditional IRA. I want to make it a Roth. What do I do? Well, the practical matter is you just file the paperwork with us. That's pretty easy to do. However, it's going to be financially up to you to pay the tax on that. It's all going to be due in the year that you convert, or on April the 15th of the year following the year you convert. That's going to be a lot. So it's going to raise your ordinary income by $100,000. It's going to probably put you in a different tax bracket. So before you go do that, you might want to think about it. You might want to split it up into several different times. And in the earlier stages of this presentation where I gave you the disclosure, I'm not your tax expert. You need to go talk to your tax expert. That's going to tell you, for you, Mr. Smith, it may be over the next 3 years, you might want to do it. But it's part of your modified adjusted gross income. If you are in a situation where you have highs and lows in your income, seek out the low years. In other words, your low tax base years, to do the conversions. And it really depends. So you got to talk to your tax advisors. Conversions start their own 5-year clock, which means that you can't take it out unless it's been in there 5 years. Understand that. That's part of the 5-year and 59.5 that we talked about earlier, about when you can take it out without kinds of fees or penalties. Here's some other questions. Oh, what about the future? What if I'm 30, 40 years old and I'm thinking ahead to what the tax rates are going to be when I retire in my 60s? Do you think your tax rates will be higher in 20, 25 years than they are today? And if you believe that, then obviously it makes a Roth even more attractive, right? Because you're not going to have to pay taxes when you take your IRAs out like everybody else is going to have to if you do it in a Roth. What about your particular tax bracket? How successful do you think you are? Now, this is harder for those of us that are just starting out. We don't know how successful you are. We're burning with a passion that we think we're going to be successful. I think the majority of people retire or they plan their retirement when they're 20s and 30s. Well, I'm going to have to live on half of what I make now or a third of what I make now. I'm going to have to downsize. I'm going to have to drive an old car. Maybe I'm in a mobile home community when I wasn't before. I'm going to have to move in with my kids. And the reason that they say that is they act like that. In other words, they don't invest. They don't put aside their income. They don't learn about self-directed IRAs and all those kinds of things. It's my goal for all of our clients here. When they retire, it's just like stepping off the plane and onto the tarmac and you're on vacation and you just go. It is not a step down because getting ready for retirement is all along the way. So my thought is that I'll probably be in a high tax bracket when I retire, not a low one. So if I'm in a high tax bracket, once again, that pushes the needle towards the Roth. You know, you also have to, if you're going to convert, can you afford to pay taxes from outside of your IRA? You do never want to, I haven't seen a logical reason why you would move from a traditional to a Roth and then have to take money out of your traditional to pay the tax cost of doing that. It would be too much to overcome. So you'd have to understand, do you have the money set aside to pay the taxes in addition to it? And once again, you can do some spreadsheet analysis to determine, based on what your expected yield curve is on your new investments, what age would you need to overcome the taxes that you had to pay on the conversion on the Roth? Should you do it? You know, once again, look at the gains on your investments. What about taxes? There are some ways. The beneficiaries, if you have a traditional, you leave it to your kids. You obviously have had the tax savings of having a traditional your entire life. You're going to pass on the tax costs to your kids. Meanwhile, if you have your Roth, your kids don't have to pay tax on the Roth. So you might have a state tax. That's how large the amount, the amount you're leaving your kids. But within an IRA, it's something to think about. But I wouldn't think too much about your kids with your IRA. The IRA it's your retirement account, and it really should support the a success of you having a great retirement. Will it push you into a higher tax marginal tax bracket? This is why, if you're going to convert, you might want to convert over several years, and it can affect your deduction credits. So once again, it's something I can't tell you up here whether you should do it, but you certainly talk with your tax advisor. Real briefly, we have time for a case study. I'm not going to go into this detail, but since we have thousands of accounts here on our platform, I decided to pull one out and take a look at what someone did with a Roth conversion. So they made a $300,000 Roth conversion. That cost them, they had to write a check to the U.S. Treasury for $99,000. And let me tell you, that's really painful to do. Because what you're doing is you're voluntarily saying, tax me now, not tax me later, because I believe in my investments over the course of time. So here's what they did. They actually converted. So they have now, instead of having a $300,000 traditional, they have a Roth. And then they purchased a property in their Roth IRA. This is kind of what it looks like when you buy property with NuView. It's NuView Trust Company, for the benefit of Jane Smith's Roth IRA and then her Roth number. Because understand that when you buy property here with NuView, you're not buying it in your name, you're buying it in the name of the account. Pay $202,000, rehab it for $60,000. You cannot rehab it on your own, but your Roth IRA would pay for someone to do this, and you can manage the whole process. You can't pay yourself to be managed. Ended up selling that property for $478,000, made $188,000, 72% return of investment over the course of the time that was out. All that's now tax-free. So understand that they paid $99,000 to convert, and just with one deal, they actually threw in their Roth bank at NuView, $188,000 in addition to $300,000 they started with. So understand how it can grow. We've had clients, I know one of the clients has been with us, I think 9 years, and they've taken a $70,000 IRA and it's now $2.3 million, all in a Roth. The all in a Roth gives me chills because I understand what kind of retirement they're going to be able to have. And this gentleman and his wife are in their early 60s. So this can be done, and he obsessed about what type of account to do it in because he felt like he had some great opportunities. So I will just tell you this kind of example, it's not everybody because some people do not want to take these kinds of risks, but the people do. I've just seen those accounts really, really grow. Now, who benefits most from them? I think young professionals, they're young, they have a lower tax bracket, so whatever they're paying in the Roth now is really peanuts compared to what their taxable income is going to be. People that are already there and want to have lower taxes in retirement, estate planners, this is kind of interesting. I'm starting to see a lot more be aware of Roths. By the way, you might be interested in knowing that in 2020, the most recent information that I had on Roths, 20% of all IRAs are in Roths. And I think the reason why it's not even, and by the way, it's growing really steeply. The reason why it isn't growing more steeply is a lot of people are still in 401k plans and they haven't rolled them over. As they're rolling them over and they learn about this opportunity, more and more people are choosing to roll over into and convert to a Roth. And retirees that seek flexibility. So depending on which one of these categories, you need to kind of look at it a little bit extra hard. What are the next steps? Well, I'll tell you what, let me come back to the questions. Amy, do you have any questions from anybody that's keyed them in yet?
Yes. One is, are there any exceptions or rules for inheriting a Roth IRA from a deceased account holder?
From what kind of account holder?
Deceased.
Well, that's all inherited IRAs would cause someone to be deceased to inherit it. But the rules are generally this, as I understand it, and the rules have changed over the last couple of years. But if you're a spouse that inherits, you get to take it as your own. So understand, that's really cool. So not that anyone dying is cool, but the fact that it passes so effectively. So if I unfortunately die young, or let's say my wife is much younger than me, she could hold that Roth for another 20 or 30 years and continue to build it up with all the same capabilities. She's not forced to take it out. It's all the same rules. So she's going to get benefit from it just as if I continue to live to the age that she lives. If, let's say, I give it to my kids, the kids get it as a Roth. So, for example, they get the benefit of tax-free growth and all of that, but they have to take it out within 10 years.
Sounds good. And we have another one. Are there any strategies for optimizing contributions to a Roth IRA while considering other retirement accounts and financial goals?
Oh, that's a difficult question. It's really, really broad. Of course, what we talk about here isn't your only savings vehicle. Sometimes it starts as that. And so early on in my career, my only savings was 401k plan. Oh my goodness, I could never get up to those contribution limits. As I got older and I had interests outside of that, like real estate, I put a lid on contributing to my 401k. I said, maybe I'll do 6%, but I'll go up to where my employer matches, and then I'll take my after-tax money, and then I can go to banks because I have deposits. I go to banks and I buy my first property there. Then as I have more lift and more capability to put it in the plan, then it was when I discovered the fact that I could use my IRA. When I discovered use my IRA, that was where I had $125,000 I had saved for 13 years at Lockheed. So it was just mind-blowing that I could actually go use it in real estate. I had more money there than outside. So that's where it kind of broke loose for me. This was back in 1980, so Roth didn't come into play till 97. So I think that the key for you is to recognize where all those types of investment vehicles are choose the one that's best for you. There are no other ones like the Roth IRA, which allows you tax-free retirement in the future. So take a look at that. I would maximize your opportunity in that. And by the way, a lot of 401k plans, if you're employed, a lot of 401k plans give you a Roth provision inside of it, which is all about being taxed now, not later, and getting it free later from taxes when you take it out. So take a look at your 401ks, but I'd highly encourage you first to look at a Roth IRA.
Great. And the last question from online is, can I contribute to both a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA in the same year?
You certainly can. However, your limits are the limits of each individual one. So I believe the limits this year are $6,500 if you're under the age of 50, and it's another $1,000 on a catch-up provision. So you could put half in one and half in the other, but you're still limited to the $6,500. Okay. Let me just finish up with a couple things. So your next steps to learn more about this, and if I were you, remember I talked about the 5-year clock? It's important. The 5-year clock can start with as little as $1,000 in your account. I think what you're going to find, if you haven't been self-directing, these types of accounts are amazing. They cost very little, but it gives you the choice of being able to invest in things that you know and understand. And once again, I kind of think that you have a better chance of success if you retire with a self-directed IRA. So you can simply point on this and find us, and that's a way to get an appointment with one of our business development people. There's a couple things before I close I want you to understand. So this will get you for your free consultation. But I want to share something with you. After we started this company about 3 years ago, I knew that it needed to be more than just a retirement vehicle for people. And I love the fact that we brought this to Central Florida, and now it's nationwide, our company. And God's really blessed us. But I knew that I had to bless somebody else in that process. And I got invited to go to a wheelchair distribution in Mexico, of all places, strange kind of charity. And when I saw the change in mobility, I said, I want to be part of that. And we created our own charity around it. And it's called Share the Love. And I want to make sure that every presentation that I give talks a little bit about this. We go all over the world with a lot of our clients and our friends, and we distribute wheelchairs. We raise money for them. So we have donors that are faithfully donate to us. It's $200 a chair, and we go deliver them. And we actually help support this in a big way because of all of you that become clients of us. We love giving back, and we love doing it this way because it's a community effort, and we help people make people fly when they used to crawl. It's just so incredibly exciting. And we went on 10 trips this year. We helped 2,600 people because of faithful people like you, and the joy of doing this is great. So you can shoot on that. Remember this little punny name, Share the Love, because that's what we do. We provide new wheelchairs to people. So I want to thank you for your time and coming online. And whether you're seeing this live or you're seeing this recorded, love to have you as a client and help teach you more and more about the opportunity of tax-free investing. Thanks so much.